Hey all, what's up? Today we're going to start Unit 2, so this is a very exciting time. In this particular video, we're going to be going over demand. And so before we start, a joke. What do you call the security outside of a Samsung store? Guardians of the Galaxy. Roar! So demand. So with demand, the first thing that we need to do is define what demand actually is, and our dictionary definition is on the screen right now. So our definition for demand is just the different quantities of goods that consumers are both willing and able to buy at different prices, right? So let's say, right, that we have a person, right? Let's say that we have Jeff Bezos, right? So this is going to be Jeff Bezos here. So Jeff Bezos, right, has a lot of money. And so we're going to say that Jeff Bezos is able to buy whatever he wants to buy. But if he isn't willing to buy it, then he does not factor into demand. And so that those two words in our definition are extremely important. So to factor into demand, you have to be both willing and able to buy different goods at different prices. So for me, let's look at Tesla. So for me, right, I may not be able to buy a Tesla, but I am willing to buy one. Do I factor in demand? Well, the answer is no, right? Because I have to be both willing and able to purchase the Tesla. And so with this demand, with our definition of demand, there's something else called the law of demand. And so the law of demand just states that there is an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. And this word right here, quantity demanded, is extremely important, right? The law of demand does not state that there's an inverse relationship between price and demand. It states that there is an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. And we'll get into that a little bit later on in this video. But first, right, why does the law of demand actually occur? Well, there are really three different reasons. The first being the substitution effect, the second being the income effect, and the last being the law of diminishing marginal utility, which is something that you guys should already be familiar with because we went over that in Unit 1. So what exactly is the substitution effect? Well, the substitution effect just says that if the price of a certain product goes up, consumers buy less of that product and buy more of another product, and vice versa. So for example, right, the substitution effect, one of the easiest examples or the best examples is going to be the difference between Coke, right, Coca-Cola, and Pepsi, right? So here, people don't buy Coke and Pepsi together at the same time, right? Everyone buys Pepsi because that is the superior product compared to Coke, right? Don't at me on that one. So here, right, let's say that the price for Coke, right, it increases. Well, what's going to happen? Well, people are going to buy less Coke, but then they're going to demand more Pepsi, right? Because if Coke becomes more expensive, the substitute good for Coke is going to be Pepsi, so people are going to want to purchase more Pepsi in lieu of purchasing Coke here. The second reason is the income effect. The income effect just states if the price goes down for a product, the purchasing power increases for consumers, which allows them to purchase more. So what all that is saying is that, well, if the price of a product goes down, people are willing to spend more money on that good, right? That's all the income effect is. So the more money you have, or if the price goes down, your purchasing power goes up, so you're going to buy more of the good. The quantity demanded goes up. Well, the opposite is true too, right? If the price of the product goes up, right, your purchasing power goes down, so the quantity demanded is going to decrease here. Right? So an example, right? So let's say that you're looking to buy jet skis, right? And we're looking at this through the income effect here. Well, if the price of jet skis, right, if it increases, well, then the quantity demanded, right, is going to decrease here. Why? Well, because now you can purchase less jet skis because the price of a jet ski increased. And so your quantity demanded, the amount that you're willing and able to buy decreased there because jet skis became more expensive. All right, so the last one is the law of diminishing marginal utility. And this is something that we went over in Unit 1. Basically, all the law of diminishing marginal utility is the more you consume of something, the less satisfaction you're going to receive from each additional good that you consume, right? So the more I consume of marshmallows, that first bite of marshmallow, I'm going to get immense satisfaction. But by the 10th one, I'm pretty much going to get no satisfaction because I had my fill of marshmallow here. So basically, all this is saying is this last point here, right? The more you buy of any good, the less satisfaction you get from each new unit consumed, right? So the more you consume, the quantity demanded is going to decrease and decrease and decrease because you're getting less and less satisfaction. And so all of this leads us to actual graphing of demand. Okay. So before we actually start graphing, right? Basically, all the demand curve is just a graphical representation of a demand schedule. And all demand schedule is just we have the price and we have the quantity demanded. And here we said that there's an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. So what this means is that our demand curve is downward sloping, which shows the inverse relationship between price, which is going to be on our y-axis, and our quantity demanded, which is going to be on our x-axis. And we're going to see an example of that on the next slide. And so here, whenever you see a supply and demand graph, or really any graph, we're holding all things constant, right? So any outside factors like income, like technological progress, anything like that is not going to be included unless it's specifically mentioned in the question. And if it is specifically mentioned in the question, then either our demand or our supply curve is going to shift. So that's why if we're just looking at this one moment in time with supply and demand, right? Everything is held constant. So here, right? So this right here is our demand schedule, right? We have our price and we have our quantity demanded. And so if you notice, right, as price goes down, well, what happens to our quantity demanded? Well, our quantity demanded increases, right, as the price goes down, which should make sense. So in this example, we're looking at the price of milk. We're also looking at the quantity of milk. So if the price of milk is $5, well, not a lot of people are going to want to purchase it. But if the price of milk drops to $1, then all of a sudden, a whole bunch of people is both willing and able to purchase it. So here, right, our demand curve is going to be downward sloping, as shown on the screen, right? And so here's a better line to illustrate it. And so where do we get market demand? So now that we know what an individual demand curve looks like, well, where do we get the demand for an entire market or for the entire demand for a specific good? Well, we just add up the individual demand curves. That's all we do. So if we want to get to, let's say this is pizza, right? So here, if we're looking for the market demand for pizza, we're going to add up Bill's demand for pizza, Ted's demand for pizza, and all the other people's demand for pizza eventually adds up to our market demand here. All right, so now that we went over just sort of why is our demand curve downward sloping, and we know what the demand curve looks like and how we get to the market demand, the last thing that we need to go over is, well, what shifts our demand curve, right? What are some things that actually shift it? And so the one big thing I want to point out to you is what's in orange right here. Price does not shift the curve. All a change in price does is it causes movement along the curve here, right? So if this is our demand curve and we have a change in price, all it does is it causes movement up and down the demand curve. Let me say it again. Price does not shift the curve, okay? So let's look at an example. So here's a demand schedule. We're still looking at milk, but let's say that all of a sudden there's this new scientific study that shows if you drink milk, you get smarter. So what's going to happen? Well, here's our original demand curve. But if you notice, right, our quantity demanded started to increase because at each and every single price point, people are going to want to demand more milk because they know, based on this fake scientific study, that if you drink milk, you get smarter. So what's going to happen to our demand curve? Well, our demand curve, right, is going to shift to the right because people are demanding more milk at every single price point here. And so if you notice here, the prices itself didn't change. But at $5, more people wanted milk. At $4, more people wanted milk. At $3, and so on and so on and so on, more people wanted milk here. Right? But let's look at the opposite. What happens if milk made you bald? There's a new scientific study that says if you drink milk, your hair falls out and now you're bald forever. Well, the opposite is going to happen, right? Well, we're going to have a decrease in demand. Or in other words, our demand curve is going to shift left. And so notice again, Just because our demand curve shifted to the left, our prices didn't change. But at every single price point, people wanted less milk because they don't want to go bald. And so if we look at this, right, there are two ways that we can go from point A to point, or there are two ways we can get to sort of a $4 or $5 shift, right? There's a difference. All this slide is trying to say is there's a difference between a change in quantity demanded and a change in demand. If we move along the original demand curve, right? So if we move along this demand curve in blue right now, that is a change in quantity demanded. And the only way we can get to a change in quantity demanded is going to be a change in price. However, if our entire demand curve shifts to the right or to the left, as we see with D1, right here, then that is called a change in demand. All right, so price doesn't shift the curve, but if there is a change in price, there's a change in quantity demanded and not a change in demand itself. And so lastly, right, are 5 different shifters or determinants of demand. So if there is a change in any single one of these, there is going to be a shift, a rightward or leftward shift in our demand curve here. So taste and preferences, number of consumers, price-related goods, income, and future expectations. So let's go over this real quick. Well, first, price-related goods are just substitutes and complements. Substitutes are just goods that are used in place of one another. So we said that an example of this is just Coke and Pepsi, right? So if the price of Coke goes up, well, our demand for Pepsi is going to increase. Right? Because here, people don't want to buy Coke because it's more expensive, so they're going to buy the substitute good, which is Pepsi. A complement are goods that are bought and used together, right? So here, let's say we have an example would be skis and helmets, right? Because anytime you go skiing, you should be wearing a helmet to protect yourself. So here, if the price of skis goes up, right? Well, the demand for helmets is going to go down because you're always going to buy those two goods together. Or another example is peanut butter and jelly, right? If the price of peanut butter increases, well, no one's going to buy peanut butter. Well, here, if people buy jelly, if peanut butter and jelly are complements, if no one buys peanut butter, no one is also going to buy jelly, so the demand for jelly is going to fall. Normal goods or income, right? Normal goods and inferior goods. Normal goods are goods you buy when you have money. So if you get an increase in salary, the demand for normal goods increases. For inferior goods, these are goods that you buy when you don't have money, right? So if, let's say, you lose your job, right, the demand for inferior goods increases here, right? So let's say for normal goods, right, let's look at ramen, right? So the more money you have, right? Let's say you're going to go to Nobu and get really expensive ramen at Nobu. So here, let's say you get an increase in your salary. Well, the demand for that Nobu ramen is going to increase, right? Well, if we look at inferior goods, let's look at $1 ramen, right? Sort of the really, really poor, bad tasting sort of dollar ramen, the Marumen type. So here, right, let's say you lose your job. Well, the demand for dollar ramen is going to increase, and the demand for the Nobu ramen is going to decrease because you don't have money anymore. All right, so that's all I have for you guys today, and I'll catch you guys next time when we talk about supply. All right, peace.